Welcome to the Pulse of St. Louis. I'm Shirley Washington. Tonight we take a closer look at a new custody sharing law that could have a profound impact on child custody cases throughout the state. Katie Corman has more from parents who have spent years fighting for more time with their children.
When my son was born, it was the best day of my life. I mean, I was in just total heaven.
6 weeks after Mark Ludwig's son was born, he says his son's mother moved away, taking their baby with her. Ludwig says he worried he would never see his son again.
What happens if something happens to me and someday he wonders, did my dad ever want to know who I was? So I started writing in a journal before I went to bed what I thought about him, what my goals or aspirations were for him.
Ludwig says he hired a private investigator and nearly went bankrupt searching for his son. 204 days would pass before he would see his son again.
Before it happened to me, I just assumed that if a father wasn't spending time with their kids, they were the typical deadbeat dad who probably didn't have an interest in the kids and probably shouldn't have had custody anyway.
After Linda Reutzel's son's divorce, he was allowed to see his daughter one night each week and every other weekend. The arrangement granted to the majority of single fathers in Missouri.
My son was a hands-on father. His wife worked some nights and some weekends, so he did everything for that child from infancy on. There was absolutely no reason for him not to get 50-50.
There's so many fathers out there that aren't deadbeat dads. They love their kids. They want to be a part of their children's lives, but they're realistic and they understand the fact that in the way the courts were set up before this law passed, the deck was stacked against them.
Ludwig says many fathers hope they'll be able to make up for lost time when their children are older.
And unfortunately, by then the bond's been broken because in the kid's mind, Dad gave up on me. Dad didn't give up. Dad just didn't get a chance.
Jeremy Roberts says the new law takes previously suggested guidelines for determining custody and establishes a statewide standard.
Prior to this law, the courts could or could not answer those questions. This bill forces them to have to answer each one of those.
Roberts says while the new law doesn't require courts to award equal time to both parents, streamlining the process across the state is a step in the right direction. From the News 11 studio, I'm Katie Corman.
Joining me now, Kenneth Goins, attorney, Jeremy Roberts, and Mark Ludwig with the Fathers' Rights Movement. Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate it. I want to talk a little bit about this law. Jeremy, fill me in. Give me the backstory about what exactly does the law do and how did it come about?
The law actually has 10 moving parts in it. Some of those range from, and the main focus is what's called facts, findings, and conclusions of law. What it does is it requires the courts, there's 8 determining factors of custody that the General Assembly came up with many years ago. And at that time, the courts, the wording in the law was they shall consider the determining factors. Meaning the courts could not, if they wanted to address the actual, each factor, they could. But the problem was, and what we find out is many fathers, mothers that are involved in the court system, the courts were picking and choosing. And basically, instead of applying all of the factors, what was happening with some of these rulings, what we had heard in feedback from these individuals was that they weren't getting real answers and a real solid determination of what's in the best interest of the child, which is what those determining factors are supposed to do when the General Assembly came up with them. So with the new law, the judges have to answer each one of those based on the evidence from court or from trial.
So give me an example of what the court has to address.
Again, it's the facts, findings, and conclusions of law. They're going to have to, some of those factors are which parent is going to allow for more frequent time with the child. So basically, that you can work with each other outside of what the strict guidelines are of the actual document itself of the parenting plan. You can actually, hey, this weekend something's coming up. Do you mind if we switch or something like that? That's actually already in the determining factors. That's one of the determining factors. But even though some parents were actually demonstrating that, the problem was some of these individuals thought that the courts really weren't taking the weight of that and applying it with their judgments. There's many. There's 7 other factors off the top of my head. And
right. So how did this law come about? Who championed? Who authored the law?
Well, Linda Reutzel, who was in this story there, she's not here today, and we miss her. So hi, Linda, and we wish you were here. But Linda and Ken actually a year before had met, and I'll let you take over, Ken, with that.
Okay. Well, at this time, I'd like to acknowledge Linda. I mean, Linda is the one that spearheaded this. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing family law for about 18 years. I don't practice it now, but I've been practicing it for about 18 years. And one of the things I did once I stopped practicing that type of law is I started an organization called Protecting American Families, and I did that because in my experience, there was this thing in courts. Courts are a reflection of our society, and our society kind of saw dads as secondary parents, not primary parents. And you could even see some of the case law would even identify parents as primary or secondary. And what you had this thing called, this case back in the 70s called the Siegenthaler case. And the Siegenthaler case essentially gave dad some time in the summer, every other weekend, and every other holiday. That's known as the Siegenthaler schedule. And, I think where we are now, the Siegenthaler schedule really doesn't make you a parent. It makes you more a visitor. And so I'm part of this nationwide movement, and I met Linda at a rally in Jefferson City. She started an organization called Missouri for Shared Parenting. And so I met her at the rally, and then eventually met Jeremy with the Fathers' Rights Movement, and we all got together and we put our heads together and we said, we need to continue this push in Jefferson City to change the law and what the legislature can do when they change the law is send a message to our courts, send a message to our lawyers, send a message to Missouri citizens as a whole that fathers are important, that fathers are not secondary parents, that the children have an equal right to both parents at divorces, and that the parents have an equal right to the children at divorces. When you look at a Siegenthaler order, that really takes the father and makes him a secondary parent.
So under the new law, is custody more equal?
When I said that the law sends a message, that dads are more important. The law was effective August 28th, and on August 30th, the Missouri Eastern District Court of Appeals issued a decision, and they talked about House Bill 1550, and they talked about the Siegenthaler schedule, and they actually said that the Siegenthaler schedule was really essentially sole custody. So when you have a Siegenthaler schedule, you don't have joint custody, you have sole custody. And they actually said that is not custody. And they essentially repudiated the Siegenthaler schedule. Now, they didn't say what schedule we should be using, but they did.
But answer my question. So under the new law, is custody for the children, is it equal now, or as close to being equal as possible between mom and dad?
The goal is equality.
Okay, but are we there under the law?
It swung the pendulum. It didn't create equality.
So it did not?
No.
But that Court of Appeals ruling that just came out 2 days after it became law, they actually used language. One of the factors within our bill was that the courts, the Office of the Supreme Court Administrator, is supposed to create a handbook that maximizes the parenting time. The Court of Appeals actually grasped that language, and they put it in their ruling, and they're actually advocating in their ruling for, they use the verbatim, they use maximize the parenting time between both parents. And they actually referenced the Siegenthaler plan, which was prior to it, stating we're going to basically consider that sole legal custody now. That does not maximize and is not significant time between both parents. So what the Court of Appeals has done, well, even though the original law that we had passed, or we had hoped pass, it was ambiguous. It allowed for a lot of arguments. And what I have heard from individuals through our organization, what they've been saying is, we went to a lawyer and we asked the lawyer, what's going to change? And all the lawyers are saying not much. Nothing's going to change. But now we have this interpretation from the Court of Appeals. They have grabbed the language from 1550, our bill, and have pulled it up to what basically is almost a rebuttable presumption. And what a rebuttable presumption is, and what our original bill we had tried to put through, is that would force the courts to start at a 50-50 position, due process, equal protection, what everybody assumes family law and family courts do. But it doesn't. They're actually a court of equity, and they have different standards. So what this law did was it pulled it almost that rebuttable presumption where the courts would have to start at a 50-50 position, and with presented evidence at trial, if there was something that was there, abuse or common sense factors, then the courts would move back off of that 50-50. Obviously, you would have to have willing parents. You'd have to have legally fit parents, and in all reality, they need to live within reasonable proximity to one another. If you have those three things, we're still in the mindset. A rebuttable presumption with custody should be there because it already exists with child support. And so, obviously, if it's important to have child support, well, the best kind of support that you're going to have for a kid is going to be having both parents there.
Yeah.
So that.
Well, you know, maybe I didn't
Ken, hold that thought. Hold that thought. I got to take a break.
Okay.
Mark, when we come back, I want to hear your story because it's pretty powerful and pretty emotional. So stay with us. We're back in a moment, and we'll continue the conversation after this break. About shared parenting and why it's important. Mark, just fill me in and give me a little bit about your story because it's pretty emotional.
Yeah, brief rundown, and my story is played out day after day. There's 10 million kids in America that have gone at least a year or more without seeing their fathers. And 2.5 million of those kids are fathers in the situation very similar to mine. So I'll give you just a brief rundown. I don't want to disclose too many details, but my son's mother and I weren't married at the time, and there were some issues brought up that I had some personal concerns that I wanted a DNA test. And as a result, I was kept from seeing my son for 204 days. And now if that had been turned around and a father had kept a child from the mother for 204 days, you'd have an Amber Alert within hours with that father's pictures posted all over, claiming of a kidnapping. And yet day after day, the three of us hear stories of fathers that call us up because they've heard of us being involved in this issue. And I'm not exaggerating. On a daily basis, we get calls from fathers that say, I haven't seen my kid in 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years. And until it happened to me, I thought it was an isolated incident. And as I said before, when Katie did the story before, I honestly, if someone had told me about a father like that, I would have thought he's probably a deadbeat dad, probably doesn't care about the kids, probably just trying to avoid child support. And then after it happened to me, I woke up to the fact that, no, this is an epidemic all across America. And as of right now, I only get to see my son 6 overnights a month. And I give the analogy, imagine if you have a cookie jar and you have twin boys sitting at a table, and you give 24 of the cookies to one child and only 6 to the other. No parent would think that's fair to the kids. And yet that's what kids have to live with every day. There's kids all across America that are getting 4 or 6 nights a month with a child. And as Jeremy and Ken said, that's a visitor. That's not a dad. How are you expected to build a good bond? And unfortunately, society is paying the price. You know, we see the teen suicide rates. We see the high school dropout rates. We see the kids in incarceration with substance abuse. And 80 to 90% of every one of those issues comes from fatherless homes. And, I want my son to have a very good relationship with his mother. He deserves that. And that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be about he said, she said, whatever happened, happened. But bottom line, the child deserves equal time with both parents.
Yeah. And so when you were separated from your child, you started journaling.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So it's still a little hard to talk about. It's a little chill, but there was a time where I didn't know if I'd ever see him again. And I thought, what if something happens to me? And is he ever going to wonder, did Dad love me? Was Dad trying to find me? And so I started thinking, well, I'll write him a little journal. So I started writing a journal. I've got 21 of these books now that I've written to him literally every single night. So he's 6.5 years old, and every night of his life is journaled in one of these journals of every thought that I've ever had to him, what we did, our trips to the zoo, funny little statements he's made, just everything. And then in there I also put different thoughts that in case I wasn't able to track him down and something happened to me. I had a medical issue. I was diagnosed with an inoperable cyst in my brain 4 years ago. And we didn't know how things were going to go. And I thought, well, just in case I don't make it, I'd like to leave some tips. So spread out in there are tips that when he's in high school, I said, sorry, it's hard to talk about.
Yeah.
But I thought, maybe when he's in high school, if he wanted that father mentorship, that unconditional love, these are things I would want him to know, different mentorship type tips. So all that's put in a little journal.
Would you read an entry? Would you share
probably
an
not,
entry?
because it's literally a personal thing. I've never shared it with anybody. It's
Really?
literally it's basically a diary for my son. And I plan on giving it to him when he's 21 because I've tried to write it in such a way that doesn't de-edify his mother, because I really sincerely want him to have a right to love his mother without feeling guilty about that. So I've tried very hard to make sure that I do that. But obviously he's going to wonder why Dad wasn't having much time. So I'm going to wait to give it to him until he's old enough, I think, to comprehend the issues and everything.
So do you still journal? Do you still
absolutely. Matter of
every
fact,
day?
I brought it. I'm going to have you write in it after we leave here today. I've literally, matter of fact, I had lunch with him today. I brought him pizza. The doctors I work for let me off because I go I only get 2 nights on the good weekends, 1 on the off weekends, and that's a hard time to go all week long without seeing them. So the doctors I work with let me off on my lunch hour. I drive 25 minutes to his school, have a quick 15-minute lunch with him, and drive back to work.
Yeah, how frustrating is that for you?
It's very frustrating, and the thing is, like I said, it shouldn't happen for his benefit. And like I said, the sad thing is, it's not just me. It's these guys. I'll tell you, that's played out day after day after day across America. You know, they say, I read a statistic recently in one of the journals that we all subscribe to, that literally every single minute of every single day, the family courts in the U.S. of A. are basically creating a fatherless child.
I mean,
every
and
single
that's
minute.
That's why what you have Linda, who's from Cape Girardeau, you have Jeremy, that's from St. Charles, and me from St. Louis City. And after practicing family law for 18 years, I stopped and started practicing another law, but started an organization. And I came together with these other organizations, and we pushed for what we would call more fairness in our courts. Right now, if you go to court, there's a fight. I mean, without a presumption, without a sense of fairness, then everyone's trying not to get the Siegenthaler schedule. So that means you come in and you're not saying that if both parents are good parents and they're reasonably and they're close, then there's no reason for a Siegenthaler order. But right now, because Siegenthaler had been in some people's mind the standard, then people come in and they fight. If you have a presumption, if you have people coming in equal, that is, and what we're talking about here are children who have who have rights to equal access to both parents, and parents have an equal access to their children, not a Siegenthaler order. And so we came together and we walked the halls in Jeff City. We walked and talked to every legislator that would talk to us. Linda led the charge. You know, she's a grandmother from Cape Girardeau. She said she went to court, got the Siegenthaler order. Now her granddaughter's gone. You know, why is that so? And then I said, it's so because the Siegenthaler order, in some people's mind, is the standard, even though it's not. So what this law did, after the law was passed, now you have a judgment that says Siegenthaler schedule is sole custody and is not the standard. So in that way, we were successful. We didn't get a presumption of shared custody. Anytime anyone's arguing against equality, which is what we're arguing for, that when people come to court, parents who are willing, who are fit, and who are geographically close are equal. And that's where the parents should start. And then you don't have the fight. Because everybody, if the standard is 50-50, then the fight is when you want to deviate from that. And then you have to have a reason. And that reason would be a poor parent or someone who's unfit or who's unwilling. I mean, and that's how we got together. I mean, I met Jeremy, and he's become my best friend. Linda's become my best friend. I was checking my emails. I have 662 emails from Linda.
That's a lot of emails.
662 emails from Linda. And I got 400 from him.
Oh, my goodness.
I got about 100 from Mark. So, you know, I mean, this is something that we worked very hard for.
Right.
And it's good to look at this judgment and see the change in the attitude, because it also tells fathers, because you not only have a right, but now you have a responsibility to be a good father, because you're not cutting us out anymore.
Right.
And that's what I was saying, and that's why it was important enough to me to start an organization and do all this for free on my own time.
Wow.
Yeah, we all volunteered, all of us.
All your volunteers?
Nobody's getting paid. This is all time off work, taking leave of absences, all that, and we're not looking for fame and TV. That's not what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. We honestly want a system that allows for fatherhood to be legal. That's what we're doing. We don't want to be pushed
each of us ran into is after we went through our situations, we thought, how has this been allowed to continue? Why didn't somebody leave the door open for us?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so our attitude is, okay, it's time for us to try and do what we can do to help the people behind us.
Yeah, I don't want my children to have to fight a battle over custody. You know, I don't want my children to suffer like I don't want my children and their children or my grandchildren to suffer. You know, like I felt like my children suffered. You know, it's part of my divorce.
On that note, we've got to take a break. Stay with us. When we come back, we're going to find out what happened. You know, you just heard these guys say they went to Jeff City and they talked to lawmakers. We're going to find out what the lawmakers thought about their presentation. Stay with us back after this. We were talking about what happened when this law came together and this bill, and you guys were actually going to Jefferson City and you were talking with lawmakers. So Jeremy, just share with me, what was the reaction that you received from some of our legislators at Jefferson City?
It's one of those things where I've never been involved in this process before. So just somebody that had met some people and started a conversation, and you just take that step and just, let's see what's going to happen. I didn't know what to expect. Honestly, I thought we may have an uphill battle. And we got there and we started talking to these legislators, and they started reciprocating. And we get it. We know, we hear this all the time. But the problem is, not problem, and they have done a fantastic job. I mean, kudos to the legislators. Incredible how they came together. But I didn't know what we were going to walk into. And then the problem that they have is they're legislators. 5 minutes with us on this subject, 5 minutes on another subject, 5 minutes. So they need somebody that's going to wind up saying, we're going to give you information, we're going to give you ideas, see if this works, and you start becoming a team with all this. And next thing you know, they start discussing amongst themselves. And I literally took off work for almost 4 months, and I was up there a lot. Not advocating for my organization, advocating for myself, and saying that there's a problem. Ken, Mark, all these other people. I would be on the phone with people that want to testify from all over the state, because it's a shame, but the Bar Association we've reached out plenty of times. Work with us on this, and all we get is crickets. So, what would be nice is for just some type of response from them of this is where we're at, let's find a middle ground. And it's not, I'm going off subject here a little bit.
So what was the vote? What was the vote on the bill?
The vote, that was the moment where it was like, wow, we're making a difference. In the Senate, when this bill, this is the second version of our bill, when it actually went to a vote on the floor, in the Senate it was unanimous, 28-0. And then it hit the House, and it was 154-2.
Wow.
I've never heard anything like that.
For Republicans and Democrats to all agree like that.
So, what was your reaction when you heard Mark?
Now, I was excited. Jeremy was in Jeff City.
Mark was excited.
And I was just, he was on the phone with me,
Mark
and I was just
over the phone and
ecstatic.
Over Facebook.
Yeah.
And over Facebook, right?
Go.
Yeah. So what does it mean for you, Mark?
The biggest thing, I think, for all of us, as much as we love the fact that it's going to help our personal situations, we just feel so good that we're making a difference because of all, like I said, with all of us now, it's not just about our own situation. We've become involved in the lives of all these people that have been calling us with their stories, day after day after day, and you really get to, learn some of these. And several, it's very sad, but all of us know of a few suicides over the last 6 months of fathers that had been kept from their kids for 6 months or a year, didn't think they were going to get them. They were involved with our Father's Rights Facebook page, and they were private messaging us, and we got to know them as friends, and all of a sudden we found out they gave up. And to think, that child is never going to know their dad. So I think the best thing that I know for myself, and probably for Jeremy and Ken too, is just when that passed, it was like, you know what, there's a lot of kids out there that are going to get a dad now that probably would have never had a dad. And I think that's what I feel best about, is not just my own situation, but how many other kids are going to get a chance to know their dad now?
Now, if you want to talk about the legislative process, I had before I met Jeremy, before I met Mark, before I met Linda, I had reached out to legislators, but as an attorney, you just don't always get the same reaction. You're an attorney, you're a hired gun, and people just don't necessarily listen to you. But I can tell you, they listened to Linda. She is a grandmother. You could see it in her eyes. She loves her grandchildren. She went to court, and now the grandchild is separated from her. That is it's just like Mark. That is a story. That's what got the legislators' attention.
And the one testimony of the one girl, we won't mention her name, but there was a girl who'd been alienated from her father, and there wasn't a dry eye in that whole hearing room with all the senators when she told her story of how she had been alienated and told lies about her father and sought him out and found out that her dad had been seeking time with her the whole time.
Yeah.
And
the legislators were receptive.
Yeah.
They were receptive to those stories. They were receptive to Linda. They were receptive to Mark. I think the legislators even indicated that they had gone through some of this in their own lives, or they had relatives that had gone through this, and they saw that there are problems in our family courts, and they need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed through our legislature, and that sends a signal to our executive branch and also our judicial branch that they need different approaches. We don't spend the kind of time, energy, and money that, including Linda. I mean, I can tell you this: we would not be successful without Linda.
Because this is a big impact on grandparents.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yes. I mean, and also what it says is that this is not just a whole bunch of angry men. These are mothers and grandparents who are affected by this. and that, I think that got the attention of our legislators, almost all of them. And I mean, we had conversations, and I don't remember ever receiving a negative. Do you ever remember receiving a negative response?
No. I was actually keeping track in case we needed to have a veto override.
That was nothing.
And when that, like I said, when that vote came down, it was amazing. I thought it would be more than enough, but and to have that, and every legislator since then I've talked to, it's just been like, wow.
Now,
and their staff.
Hold that thought, Kenneth. I got to take a break. Stay with us back after this. I think I had to cut you off. Welcome back to the Pulse of St. Louis. I want to learn more about the Fathers' Rights movement. So, Mark, if you will, give me a little bit of the history of this organization.
It's basically a grassroots movement. It was basically started by a guy in Alaska, and just a neat guy. Yeah, Thomas Fiddler, just a great guy, and spread all across the country. So now there's chapters in all 50 states and all across the country. Jeremy's the lead of the Missouri chapter now. But it really is. It's a grassroots movement. There is no salary, no anything like that. It's just a bunch of fathers that locked arms and said we need to make a difference. The national chapter, we now have 245,000 members. We've added 200,000 members in the last 12 months. The Missouri chapter, we are up to almost 3,000 members now.
Right. We had 200 at the beginning before all this happened, and we're already since January at about 2,000. And this is, you said fathers, but
that is right. Matter of fact, there's like 30% of the people are women that are.
The overwhelming majority of our actual page on Facebook is women.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
So
this is not
supportive.
Yes, this is not a male-dominated movement by no. Linda has her own organization, Missouri for Shared Parenting. She's a subsidiary of the National Parents Organization, and also, again, I started Protecting American Families. So, and there are also other organizations out there, but in terms of the organizations that spearheaded this bill, you'd have to. It's the Fathers' Rights Movement. It's Missouri for Shared Parenting, a subsidiary of the National Parents Organization, and my organization, Protecting American Families. The way this got started really is Facebook. I mean, Facebook that's it. I knew Jeremy. I actually met Jeremy in Jefferson City when Linda and I were on our way to argue for the predecessor of this bill, and I think Tom had told me. Tom said, "You got to talk to this guy, Jeremy. You got to talk to this guy."
Jeremy's amazing. He's like the most humble guy you can imagine. And I'm telling you, none of this would have happened without Jeremy.
Yeah, I walked in, and he is one of the hardest working people I know. I walked in, and we were going over the law with the legislator, and we were making changes. We were trying to see exactly what would make the most sense. And it was me, Jeremy. I mean, in terms of the law, it's me, Jeremy, and Linda, or Linda, Jeremy, and me.
It sounds like a movie.
Yeah, because Linda got the ear of the legislators even before I did. I mean, I tried, but I couldn't. She got the ear of the legislators. Yeah, without a doubt.
So. All right, got to take a break. Stick with us. We're back after this. Time now for final thoughts. Mark, how about if we start with you, your final thoughts on this subject?
I just want to thank you for bringing the awareness up. If there's any fathers out there that are going through this situation, encourage them to connect to us through Facebook. And the bottom line in my mind is it's not about mothers, it's not about fathers, it's about the kids. And kids deserve equal time with both their parents. And I'm so grateful for these guys and the leadership that they took in Missouri this year. So.
Good point. Jeremy, final thoughts, sir.
I appreciate, everybody, that is involved and been involved in this. I'd like to quickly touch on something that's basically the motivation behind this that people don't really know about. It has to do with the Social Security Act. And there's a section called Title IV, Section D, which has to do with the creation of child support orders. The states are actually allowed, it's called payment incentives to states. They get matching funds for the amount that they order as a state, how efficiently they are at collecting it, and they get money directly from the Social Security Act. So there's a direct symbiotic relationship between the creation of child support orders, which is based off of the disparity of custodial time with the kids and their parents. So it's necessary to have that child support order be functional and to support the financial aspects and the funding within the state programs, the bureaucracy that's there. It's necessary to offset a parenting schedule. That's where this all starts. So really, this is not about an issue. This issue is not about a bunch of bitter guys trying to be there, trying to complain. What we're trying to do is we're trying to identify the mechanisms within the current law and change it so kids can literally have access to both of their parents. That's what we're doing here. That's all this is about. This has nothing to do with child support. This is about us being there for our kids, and we're stepping up.
Good point. Kenneth, final thoughts, sir?
I'd like to echo something that Linda always says, and it also found in this case. It says in the Morgan v. Morgan case that was recently decided, that cited to HB 1550. It says, in fact, we don't believe any reasonable parent would argue 2 or 3 nights or 14 nights constitutes joint custody. And they acknowledge that the point of the legislative intent of House Bill 1550 seeks to maximize to the highest degree the amount of time the child may spend with each parent. That's the purpose. That's why we're here. I appreciate Linda. I appreciate these guys. It's good that we got this bill passed, and there's more work to do.
All right, and I appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for joining us for the Pulse of St. Louis. For News 24/7, open the News 11 app on your mobile devices, and be sure to watch News 11 weekdays at noon, 4, and 7. I will see you next time.